There's value in being able to navigate multiple spaces and do so with grace. There's value in being able to operate in multiple spaces and do so with grace and authenticity. There's this young lady that I follow online, and she's a runway model, right? So she walks the runway with some of the largest brands in the world, all the known brands. But where I know her from is not from the runway, as I don't follow high fashion. What I know her from is giving exposure to her African village and the way of life that she grew up in. And it's fascinating. And she was reading a comment that someone, I guess, had left on one of her posts, and it was talking about like how can she go from this high fashion environment to living in the village. And there are layers to people that you see in multiple spaces. Just because you see someone in one space does not mean that they don't have the capacity to operate well in another space, right? We have the ability to adapt. As I mentioned in a previous video, the power of adaptability, right? Being able to adapt and adjust yourself, but yet still be yourself in multiple environments. Where you see me or how you see me over here does not necessarily mean that I'm going to be different over here. It's still the same place, still the same person. I just might present differently because I'm in a different environment. That comes from being exposed to a lot of things. And I've used this multiple times, but a stanza from the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. One of the stanzas says, if you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. Being able to navigate amongst the crowds and walk with the kings. And I think her example here, and I'm going to play the clip in a second about being in the African village, and that's a part of who she is, as well as, she walks the runway with some of the high fashion brands as well. Neither one diminishes the other. It's just a part of who she is. Listen to her clip, and we'll give a reaction to it in just a second.
How can she walk Bottega Veneta and then come over here in the village? How can she? Is she the one? If you are expecting my life on the runway to be the same life and the same lifestyle I keep up to, even here, oh my God, you're going to be heartbroken. How can
She said, if you expect what you see on the runway to be what you see here, you're going to be heartbroken. And that's the part of the adaptability. Like, we have the ability to navigate different spaces, but you have to expose yourself to different spaces to know that you're capable of navigating in these spaces. Like, I'm big on exposure. There's a quote, and I don't know the author, but I've heard it numerous times. Exposure leads to expansion, meaning when you get exposed to different places, it allows you to expand. And you expanding does not mean that you run away from who you are. It just means that now I can think about things a little differently because I've had different exposures to different things. That's what it's all about. That's the value proposition to exposure. But there's even to me, a stronger value proposition to not losing who you are. So being exposed, but yet still having that thread of authenticity is extremely important, because I think the other side to that is, if you don't have a true understanding of who you are designed to be, all the stuff that's working through you, your lineage, your history, if you don't have a strong foundation and you now get exposed to new things, that's when you do run the risk of people completely disassociating with their history, their lineage, their family, their culture, and just jumping into something else because they never established a strong foundation. But to me, the best scenario is if you have a strong foundation, you know who you are, right? You know what you were created to be, but yet you get exposure and you see different things. And those different things that you get exposed to, You can learn from those and incorporate some things into how you operate, but you also might be exposed to realize that everything that you grew up with was actually good, right? And so, again, exposure leads to expansion. What you see in one environment might not be what you see in another environment, but that through line of consistency, that through line of authenticity, that thing shows. And I think that's most important. And that comes from you having a strong foundation of knowing who you are and getting exposures that allow you to think outside the box. I think this is really cool. What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on exposure? What are your thoughts on really having a strong foundation in who you are and not losing that even when you rise and have, successes in other genres and other spaces? What are your thoughts on that? Leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And as always, make sure to subscribe. My goal is for you to become the quarterback of your mindset, and hopefully some of the content that I produce and put out there helps you along in that process. Until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise, and I'll holler at you. Peace.